Everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. Excited to have these three individuals on here with me today. Got to know them over the last couple of years, and the cool thing is I got to know them basically just kind of from being out of state, from being basically across on the other side of the nation and things like that. And now I'm getting to know them here as Indianapolis people. They are Hoosiers now. I classified all you guys as Hoosiers, so I'm a transplant myself, moving out here 8 years ago. I just answered for the first time. We were on vacation and somebody asked me, "Hey, where are you guys from?" And I think it's like the first time it really clicked with me. Like without a hesitation, I said Indianapolis. Also used to say like Columbus, Ohio. I'm a Buckeye, but no, I'm an Indy person now. So, and I think you guys are starting to classify as that as well. So excited to have you guys on here and excited to dig into on these episodes. This could be basically a two-parter. We're going to talk a little bit about what you guys were doing as out-of-state investors, now in-state investors as Hoosiers, and kind of the things that you didn't know, now you know, and some advice and tips you have for other people as well. I want to go ahead and start off by kind of just going around the horn, letting you guys kind of introduce yourselves and then give us an update on kind of what you have going on right now. I know some of you guys' focuses have shifted a little bit. So I think some of our listeners that know you guys from before might just want an update too. I know Nick, you've been on before. Aseel, you've been on before. Lauren, this is your first time on the Indy Investor Pod, so excited to have you on here. So with that, let's start with you then. Let's pick on you first. So give us a little intro for yourself and then just kind of give us an update on kind of what you have going on now and what you're investing in.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. We moved out here from Oregon in November of 2020. So West Coasters like Aseel and Nick. And in my case, I had previously been investing kind of part-time. My husband and I have decided that after I traveled here a fair bit for my previous W-2 job, started to look at the market, and it was definitely easier to cash flow here than it was in Oregon. So we started doing some investing in early 2020. Ended up picking up 7 properties that first year. So we're feeling pretty good about ourselves. And then 2020 hit and things had to slow down a little bit because, everything else broke loose with everything else going on in our lives. And then later that year, we decided to move out here. So 2020 was kind of a pause year in terms of our investments, and the market shifted a little bit too. So where we started, out with the goal of being a buy and hold investors, we ended up flipping some of those properties. Coming out here 2021, we ended up doing 5 more flips, and then currently we've got still some of our previous rentals from that first acquisition phase, and then we're right now moving into some multifamily. So we're in the middle of a big rehab on an 8-unit townhome property out in Avon. I've got a couple of real big flips that we're just about to get underway on here on the east side, and then just trying to kind of turn our attention back to that buy and hold phase because we feels like we've been doing quite a bit of flipping, and being here, it's been easy to be hands-on with all of that, but want to keep the focus back on the original goal, which was to cash flow and have passive income. So that's
awesome.
Kind of our evolution.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing. So Aseel, how about you? Give us an update, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Brian. So really my investing journey started research-wise late 2020, and I started off as, you're very kind of beginner investor exploring into real estate investing because I found the passive investing aspect of real estate very intriguing and wanted to kind of start burring. And I figured out at that time what I really wanted was a way to build up my capital and then take that capital and invest it into something passive. So I really started my journey out by flipping out of state. So majority of 2021, that's pretty much what I did. I was an out-of-state investor, heavily focused on flipping properties. And as the year kind of went by, I realized how much I love real estate and how much I love flipping, and how badly I wanted to be within the market that I was flipping in so that I could, be real estate full time. And I had a really great opportunity because my flipping went so well. I had some capital built up and gave me the flexibility to dive in a lot further by actually moving to my market of choice, which is Indianapolis now. So I moved here August of last year. And ever since then, I still flip here and there, but it's really evolved to me focusing on off-market acquisitions, wholesaling, and still flipping. And also now finally starting to grow my passive investing side of the business. So trying to acquire some more rentals and be a little bit experimental as far as maybe exploring some commercial options or some alternative passive investing options. So that's where I'm at now.
So love it, man. And one of my favorite things every time I talk to Aseel, it's just like he's the type, like the epitome of like someone that just gets passionate about talking about real estate. Like he's like, man, I love doing this. This is exactly what I want to be doing and stuff. So no, man, excited for you. So, and Nick, how about you? Let's get an update on you, brother.
Yeah, no, thank you for having us on here. I'm really, really excited. I guess I'm the most seasoned Hoosier here in the group outside of you, Brian. I moved here in June of 2020, hiding out from COVID with the intention of staying here for about 6 months. Instead, we fell in love with it. We ended up moving into our dream house here in Carmel, not that far from actually where you live at the moment. And yeah, what we've been doing, we started off as long distance, passive income, focusing on that strategy, ended up shifting to the burr. And when we got here, we just kind of cranked it up to 11. We did about 30 projects last year. I think we're on track to do somewhere between 50 and 60 this year if everything goes as planned. Doing a little bit of shifting in some cases. We're kind of following that, be greedy when others are fearful, be fearful when others are greedy. And so we think things are getting a little frothy in the market a little bit. And so we took some chips off the table. And so we're actually 1031ing right now. Looks like we might pick up a pretty cool property in Bloomington. I don't think I've talked to you about that one yet. That'll be a fun one. I'll get some advice on that one. And then, yeah, we're doing quite a bit of coaching on our side. That's been a huge growth opportunity for us, helping other people out of state get started either in Indianapolis or in other markets. And then finally, the other thing that we're kind of doing that's new and fun is we've actually brought construction in-house. It's something that we've been focusing on for a couple of years. And given how we've grown, it was a huge opportunity for us. So it's been an exciting shift for us.
Awesome. That's great, man. I'm excited for all of you guys of what you have going on. Congratulations on all your success too, of just making that transition of investing out of state and then now in state and being able to do some other things. And it's cool when I think about just the transition of all of our relationships from like the first time I've talked to you till like now, just like what you are into. And like, yeah, I didn't know that. So that's awesome that you're into that. I didn't know Lauren had a multifamily out in Avon. Like that's exciting. So I'm sure Alicia talked into that one maybe. So she loves that Avon area. But no, great stuff. So one of the questions I always like to ask, and a lot of times this gets repetitive from a lot of out-of-state investors and things like that too. But I always want to ask it because there might always be something new, and maybe you guys can elaborate on it a little bit more. But I just want to touch on this. But so when you're living in California or Oregon or Denver for some of our people, or Montana or Idaho, when you are an out-of-state investor and you decide to look at Indianapolis and invest in Indianapolis, like why Indy? Why does it work with that? I know there's a lot of other, Midwest markets that fit right into it, but why did you select Indy, Nick?
Yeah, there were a variety of reasons I chose Indy. Now, granted, I started doing this 5-6 years ago, and I didn't have two nickels to rub together at the time. So it was a cheap market. That was the obvious, easy choice. But I really did quite a bit of research on top of that. And there were a variety of factors. It's crossroads of the country, lots and lots of stuff is happening here. I was looking at a variety of factors like net migration. I knew that people were moving from other markets, Chicago, some Ohio markets, clearly, to Indianapolis. So that was important. The rent to value ratios were really important. And, like I said, I could get in relatively cheaply. That was super important to me. And then there's the added benefit for me in that, that I had some family out here. So at that point, it was a tax deductible trip to go visit my family. Finally, and I don't want to take it all up, I know we've got other panelists here. It had a really developed out-of-state investors group, which I think is absolutely fantastic. The network here in Indianapolis was fantastic. I could get information. There was a ton of infrastructure in place for property management agents that were used to dealing with us crazy out-of-state investors. And so it was a really easy transition for me to do that versus other markets.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Aseel, anything to add to that?
Honestly, Nick, you kind of hit it right on the dot. I feel like if you create a Venn diagram of like every factor that you need to have a good, favorable out-of-state or just a good real estate investing market, Indianapolis kind of fit right into that middle ground. And yeah, the biggest thing I would say is, at least the one that really made me make my decision a lot easier, is the prevalence of the community that's present within Indianapolis of just out-of-state investors who are already doing this. Like I literally, like the first real estate investing club I found in California, 9 of those people were already investing in Indianapolis out of all places. So yeah, there's a very big prevalence of out-of-state investors specifically here in Indianapolis. And not only that, but so many resources for those out-of-state investors, a prevalence of vendors who are experienced with working with out-of-state investors. So that just makes things really easy when you're just kind of looking to take action and dive into it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think the community is one of my favorite things about, just Indianapolis investing, in-state, out-of-state, whatever. And I want to give kudos to all of you guys for contributing to that community too, for being a source to help others and looking out for others as well. I think that's great. So Lauren, is there anything to add on to that of why you chose here? I know you were kind of working out here, so you were traveling here, and you kind of maybe had an insider guide on hey, what's available and what can do.
No, I had a little bit of a cheat there because I had the opportunity to travel out here 5 or 6 times a year, and it just got to looking at the market because we were definitely trying to do more investing on the West Coast, and that was getting harder and harder. And it made great sense. One of my best friends moved out to the Midwest, so that gave me more reason to come here. So, but yeah, I would echo your comments, Nick and Aseel, on the community aspect, because it was just it was made so easy for me to come out and be comfortable. Even though I was used to traveling here, it's different to stay downtown in a hotel than it is to really get to know the investment market. And every vendor that I reached out to was just so willing to share and connect me with other people, and all of our online community resources were fantastic in the beginning, and that's just grown and grown over the past couple of years. So yeah, it was much easier to get comfortable with this market than any of the others that I was researching at the time. So
yeah, awesome. So Nick, you got something to add to that? So I saw you raising your hand. The teacher in me has to recognize that. So.
No, I really wanted to shout out. It would be very easy for Aseel, Lauren, and me to all be competitors in what we're doing, but I don't see that at all. I don't see that with any of the people on the out-of-state investors group. It's just the most giving group I've ever seen. Both on Facebook, on Bigger Pockets, all those different groups are just absolutely incredible. I think we all kind of realize that it's a rising tide lifts all boats situation, and you don't see anybody kind of hoarding information or hoarding deals or anything like that.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's all about just making sure that we, kind of protecting the investor community and making sure everybody can be successful. And I hate it when I see somebody bought a bad deal from another wholesaler. I take offense to that. I'm like, oh man, why? No, I wish I could help that, or wish I could have stopped that. So I think that's one of the positive things that a lot of people get out of that group. And just on the larger scale within the Facebook group, and then even a lot of the smaller groups that even kind of have come out of that, just the networking events and stuff like that. So it's been great. So Nick, one of the things that you mentioned that I really want to point out too, because it was the first thing that I noticed when I moved to Indy, is how many other businesses are moving into Indianapolis as well, and just the growth potential that it has, because it's a lot cheaper to own and operate a business here than it is Chicago or New York or LA or any of those places. So there's a lot of potential there with that. And we've seen a lot of businesses move to Indianapolis just for that particular reason. So it's great there. Aseel, we'll start with you on this one. I want to talk about maybe if you have any tips for basically for an out-of-state investor, you being in that scenario, you being in those shoes, but now being, in Indianapolis, what are some tips that you have for an out-of-state investor of maybe how to get connected, or what things that they should look out for, just things they need to be aware of, anything along those things?
So as far as how to get connected, again, the prevalence of the community makes that very easy to connect with different people who are doing the same thing. As far as, you can go on Bigger Pockets, you can go on Facebook, you'll find a bajillion groups of people who are doing exactly what you're trying to do and who have done it before. So you don't really have to reinvent the wheel. Now, on the other side, what are some things that you should keep in mind as an out-of-state investor? Well, the biggest perspective change for me from being an out-of-state investor to coming into town, right off the bat, you realize how much the actual environment, like the weather, has a say in so many, I guess, maintenance conditions with the property. Like there's so many things that being on the West Coast, we're really not used to, as far as just managing the freeze-thaw cycle that Indiana goes through, and what kind of effects that has on your property, that has on your maintenance when you're doing any sort of project. That's something that I really did not realize until I got here. So, just as an example, something like the importance of gutter cleaning, the importance of having leaf guards on your gutters. Like I would never think about that where I'm in California, or the importance of the grading of your land. Is it grading into your foundation, or is it getting away from your foundation? Like things like that, some stuff like that you never even think about until I got here. So as a quick example, my business partner was working on a project, a flip project actually, and they were finishing out the basement for that project. And it was a pretty long and lengthy project. So they went through a couple of different seasons. Now, when you're finishing out basements, you really need to make sure that basement is fully sealed, it's dry, and that there's no sort of moisture intrusion. Because moisture intrusion is a very, very common thing that you'll see here in Indiana basements. There's very few basements that are truly dry. So, they did what they could to seal the basements. During the course of the rehab, they saw very few signs of the basement actually having any sort of water intrusion. Now, during that entire time when they were doing the rehab, they didn't really get any sort of crazily heavy rainfall. Recently, about a couple of weeks ago, we got a downpour of rain. And then what they realized is the grading of the land in the backyard was not suited to handle that kind of rainfall. So by the time that this basement was fully finished, carpets were in place, drywall was up, their backyard completely flooded because the grading of the land was not suited to drain away from the property. And they dealt with the entire basement flooding as far as like their carpet was soaking wet, there's water coming through the walls, and stuff like that is something you wouldn't even think about, especially if you were out of state. Now, luckily he was here, he was able to see it, but you need to have some very, very mindful contractors, mindful project managers that look for these details beforehand and are experienced with issues like this. So that's just one of the many, many different issues and many different details that could have a big impact on, the amount of money that you put into your property. And this doesn't just go for flips, but especially if you own rentals. I mean, little things like downspout extenders, making sure your gutters don't have any holes in them. They can, prolong the longevity of your basements, your CapEx figures so much. So that's kind of one of my personal biggest revelations that I got when I came here.
Yeah, and that's a great example of like people are aware of business or of basements because it's a little different. You have to be aware of that. Of like you were even saying like, hey, it was dry, like they did everything they needed to, but it really wasn't a basement issue. It was the grading issue. That really came into, and like the basement can only withstand so much as it's coming in there and stuff. So great example there. So Lauren, do you have any anything that you basically any tips for out of state investors or something that kind of you, now that you're here, like you're aware of a little bit more, anything like that?
Yeah, no, I think Aseel brought up a great point with the construction of these homes. They're so much older than the homes that we were used to rehabbing on the West Coast, and the downspout extensions alone can cost $10,000 if you don't get that water away from the house. So definitely, you hear about, I think even before I got here, you hear about Indy being street by street, block by block. You've got to be real careful about some of these gentrifying areas and make sure that you're buying in the good section and not a couple blocks the wrong direction. And in some cases, I found it's even house by house because of how well they've been maintained over time. I bought one recently in Windsor Park area, and mine's pretty solid on a decent foundation, and the one right next door built the same year, same size, all of those. So on paper, just looking from pictures or whatever, it would look like a very similar home, but one's a tear down basically, and the other is salvageable just based on, how long those foundations have been deteriorating or things like that. So that's, I think, just understanding these areas and what to look for in the actual construction in these older sections of Indianapolis has been something that's just been eye-opening as I've gotten to actually see these properties and walk them and feel the floor kind of doing the hammock effect as you're walking through, as well as, obviously, all the other areas around town that I've gotten to be familiar with. But I think that's the biggest thing, like Aseel, just making sure your contractors, your property managers really know what they're dealing with and can help preserve your property. If you aren't here to see the effect that the snow's having on your lawn, you've got to make sure that you've got people looking out for you and can deal with those things they're coming your way.
Yeah, I would say with one of those things that, Lauren, like you're mentioning of like, it's not just, kind of block by bite or street by street. Sometimes it's house by house. But, when I'm working with, obviously I want to be working with people that I trust and that, that have the knowledge and things like that. But I'm also asking for like documentation. I want to know if they're telling me about like what's going on in a basement, tell me about it, but also show me a video of what you're seeing so I can see it too. So I understand it a little bit more and I can look out for it next time, but we can have that discussion a little bit more, just keeping me in the loop and stuff. So those are great points and stuff. So Nick, you have anything to add to that of just some tips that you have for out-of-state investors that maybe don't have the advantage that you guys now do?
Yeah, I think everybody here would attest to this. The value of your team is everything. Cutting corners and trying to cut team members out of your team, I think, is a huge mistake. I mean, hell, Aseel and Lauren just talked about things that I haven't even really thought about that much. And I live here and I see it, but thankfully I've got a team in place that thinks about and handles these things on my behalf. So really leaning into incredible construction teams who are willing to tell you what actually needs to be done versus just putting the lipstick on a pig and having that real conversation, I think is going to be really, really important with everybody. Having a contractor who's willing to tell you, hey, Nick, hey, Aseel, hey, Lauren, don't buy this house. Like, I can do it. It's going to cost you a lot of money. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. Having a property manager who's actually willing to get out to your properties and see, hey, are the downspouts looking all right? Like, is there any preventative maintenance that needs to be done? Absolutely key. Having that agent who's willing to forego that 3%, 4% that they're going to make on that particular transaction in order to get that long-term relationship with you, I think is just absolutely key for everybody remote. I really thought when I moved out here, I was going to be walking a ton of properties constantly at my projects, checking them out, driving for dollars regularly. But what I've found is that I still rely on those same techniques I used as a remote investor of building and leaning into those particular team members. And we can expand on that if that's a direction you want to go with the conversation. But I really think that is the kind of the key takeaway. And Aseel, Lauren, let me know if you kind of disagree with anything I said there.
I would say absolutely. Like not to just I know they're going to jump on and be like, yeah, that's 100%. Like the relationships you have with those people and like building those people. I think one thing, Aseel, I'll let you finish that off and stuff, what you're going to say, but one thing just off of what Nick said is when you're looking for that team, don't find that person that wants to make that one commission off of you or sell you that one house or do that one project with you. You want that person that is asking about your goals, where you want to go long-term. You want to find that contractor that wants to do not one deal with you, but do 10 deals, 50 deals, whatever it is, or find that wholesaler that doesn't want to just sell you that one property, but wants to sell you whatever that is, 100 properties, if that's what it is. So looking out for people like that and going by asking them those questions, but also you should be getting those questions back at you as well and stuff. So I don't know, Aseel, if you want to add on to what you're going to say or anything.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, I was going to say, that's totally, I mean, it's totally correct. But to add on to that, you also have to make sure that, to find someone who knows their stuff, who is really going to be, proactive about advising you about some of these details, your vetting process has to be good, right? And sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So if they're not telling you something and you don't have the education of what to look out for, you're not going to know that they don't know. So, so the importance of stuff like this, these podcasts, and education from people who have done this in the past, who have gone through the mistakes that you are potentially going to go through. That's where it really comes into play, especially if you're someone who's newer, who's starting out. Your research and your due diligence process and your vetting process is really going to make or break you, because it's going to determine the mistakes that you make. And some mistakes are cheap and some mistakes are very, very expensive. And again, that's why I'm kind of here, so that I can kind of eliminate a lot of those by being here and observing these things myself. But I mean, your team absolutely makes and breaks it. And in turn, so does your vetting process of your team.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a mindset thing too. Like I've talked to investors before too, of like, oh, well, I'm not going to buy a property with a basement because I've heard these horror stories of, I just heard Aseel talking on the Indy Investor Pod about how this happened because of the grading. Because sometimes it's a mindset thing of like, oh, I'm not going to do this or do that. My mindset, and I think a lot of investors need to change their mindset of like, I want to find the best person that can evaluate my basement for me. I want to find the person that can handle this, because there's been basements in Indianapolis forever. There's a lot of contractors and a lot of people that have dealt with basements and moisture and grading things and stuff like that. So find the people that can handle those or fix problems for you. Because if you eliminate basements and you're in those areas where there are basements, you're eliminating a lot of the deals that you could possibly, make money on a flip with, or a wholesale with, or that'd be a solid buy and hold. So find the right teams and work with them and stuff. So Lauren, when it comes to evaluating and finding the right people and working with the right team and stuff, any tips for kind of how you guys have gone about that and how that's maybe elaborated over the last few years?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing for me is that I've found that good people know good people. So when you get connected with people like Nick or Aseel or experienced investors in this market, to Aseel's point, we've done a lot of trial and error and made a lot of mistakes. And so reaching out to people who have been doing what you're looking to do in this market, I mean, we've all said how willing this community is to share and help one another. So absolutely leverage that. I mean, reach out to people that have done it, ask who they've used. If you're, most of us aren't going to be publicly telling people who not to use necessarily. That's not necessarily what we do. But if you're thinking about using a new contractor or a new inspector or a new foundation person, just ask for referrals, ask for recommendations, because more often than not, a lot of us have kind of gone through the ringer to find the good ones, and many times are willing to share, some of those specialists and people. So that's been the biggest thing for me. And I think as you're building those teams, it's important once you find those teams and you do the vetting and you find the people that are really knowledgeable in what they do, you've got to trust them too. I think it's easy sometimes to look at a deal and everything looks great and you really want to move forward, but your foundation guy is saying that's a no-go. Well, don't just keep asking around till you get the answer you want. You want to trust those people and make sure that you're not just trying to just make something work for the sake of getting a deal done. There are so many opportunities out here. There's always going to be something else. So find the right team, ask around, and get those referrals, and then trust them once you've built that team up.
Yeah. And I always like to use that. I love that word trust that you put in there. And I'm usually going to tell them that too. Like, I'm going to trust you with this. I'm going to trust your opinion on this. But if it goes wrong, like, understand that we're probably not going to work together again, or this, there's going to be some type to it. But like you said, if you hire them, there's going to be a level of trust with it and stuff. And if you don't trust them, probably not the right person to be working with and stuff. Nick, I know you got something to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody here on this panel knows I've kissed my fair share of frogs here in the Indianapolis market, and yeah, we've all tried different people. We've all worked with different people, and to your point, trusting them, giving them the grace to go do their job, giving them the space to be successful, asking them regularly what you can do to make them more successful, I think is absolutely key. But what tends to happen here in the Indianapolis market, particularly with agents, with property managers, with contractors, is somebody's the hot new guy on the block, and then it does tend to fall apart. So I wouldn't necessarily shift your entire weight or your entire business behind, hey, whoever the hottest, newest person is there. I would wait for them to establish themselves a little bit, see how it all falls out. And I've seen this literally on agents, contractors, and property managers all. And when and if that they do start to have issues, give corrective action. And if it's not working out, then move on to the next one. You try to give everybody the opportunity to keep your business. But I know that in my 5 years here, I've had 4 or 5 different property managers. I've worked with 3 or 4 different agents, contractors. I don't even know how many contractors I've worked with over the last several years. They tend to have an expiration date that's the fastest in my experience. So try and be a kingmaker with everybody, but be willing to move on if it's not the right fit.
Yeah. One last thing to add on to that too, is like, it has to work for you too. Like, there might be a contractor that works great for Nick, but maybe it doesn't work right for me or something like that. So it has to fit what you want to do. And I'm a huge fan. If you've heard me talk before, I'm a big fan of like core values. So they have to also fit into, who we are as a company and who I want to be and what my core values are. They have to fit in that as well. So it has to be a person that I like and fits into what I want to do. And that might not be a certain property manager or a lender or contractor or something like that. So it has to be something that fits for you and your business as well. So guys, I'm gonna cut us off right here, and we're gonna kind of do a to be continued into the next episode of things maybe you guys would do differently from an out-of-state investor to an in-state investor now. But before we get off of this episode, real quick, just to kind of cap off here, I want to go around the horn, just allow you guys to get what's the best way for people to reach out to you if they have any follow-up questions or want to find out more about what you're doing or anything that may be. So Nick, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook at Off-Leash Investments, offleashinvestments.com. More than willing to help you guys get started in real estate investing. Excited to talk to you.
Do you have a shirt that you want to show?
I do have an Off-Leash Investments shirt here on. I'm always repping.
So awesome. So
Yeah.
Aseel, what's the best way for anybody to reach out to you, man?
Kind of same. My Instagram, Aseel1146. Facebook, email, it's aseel@yerunkar.com. It's my first name at my last name.com. If you know me on Facebook, then you should be able to get a hold of me pretty quickly. But yeah, probably those two ways.
Awesome. And Lauren, how about you?
I am on Facebook, Instagram under my name, and then also under Helix-Company on Instagram. You can see some of my projects there.
So awesome. If you need anything from me, you can reach out to me at brian@simplewholesaling.com. That's the best way to hit me up, but more than happy to help you out. And we'll be right back with episode 2 with these guys.